For 11 long years, he wandered through the maze of religions, philosophies, and ideologies, searching for the answer to one question that kept echoing in his soul. Who is the real God? From a young age, he had a curious mind, always asking questions others were too afraid or too indifferent to consider. While his friends were caught up in the fast pace of life, he often found himself in quiet moments, reflecting on the bigger picture. What was the purpose of life? Who created all of this? Was there one true God, or were we all just clinging to man-made ideas to feel less alone? He didn't want to follow a religion out of tradition or emotion. He wanted truth, real, pure, undeniable truth. He began his journey with the religion he was born into. He read the sacred texts, went to places of worship, and asked the religious scholars deep questions. But the more he asked, the more contradictions he found. The explanations often seemed vague or emotionally driven. He felt like the pieces didn't fit. This led him to explore other major religions. He read the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, the Torah, and many spiritual books. Each offered insights, but none gave him a complete and satisfying answer. Some offered peace but lacked clarity. Others offered rituals but lacked connection with the Creator. He attended seminars, watched debates, traveled to different countries, and even tried to live according to various religious philosophies. But something was always missing. Over the years, he encountered Islam many times, but it was always through headlines, stereotypes, or surface-level interactions. He assumed Islam was rigid, distant, or not for someone like him. He never truly considered reading the Quran. But one day, after a particularly exhausting conversation with a religious teacher who couldn't answer his honest doubts, he met a Muslim man who listened silently to his frustrations. The man didn't argue or preach. He simply handed him a copy of the Quran and said, "Read it for yourself," with an open heart. Out of curiosity and a bit of frustration, he began reading it. From the very beginning, he felt something different. It wasn't poetry or myth, it was direct, powerful, and deeply personal. It spoke to the heart, but also challenged the mind. There were verses about creation, purpose, morality, and the nature of God. The Quran didn't ask him to suspend reason. It invited him to use it. It didn't present a complex image of God. It described him as one, eternal, without partners, the most merciful, the most just. Every word struck a chord he didn't know existed in him. He would pause after every page, tears welling up, his heart pounding, as if he had finally come face to face with a truth he had been chasing for over a decade. He read late into the night, unable to put it down, and then he came across one verse. A verse that shattered all his doubts. A verse that made him cry uncontrollably. In that moment, he felt his heart surrender. Not to emotion, not to fear, but to the undeniable clarity and peace of truth. After 11 years of searching, he had found it, not in temples, not in philosophies, but in the words of a book that had been there all along. He had finally discovered the one true God, and with that, a peace that no book, teacher, or philosophy had ever given him before. He started his journey with a restless heart and a burning question: who is the real God? Born into a religious family, he was raised with rituals and routines, but none of them ever touched his soul. As he grew older, his questions grew louder. Why are there so many different beliefs? Why does each religion claim to be the truth? And if God is one, why is the world so divided over his identity? With these questions haunting him, he began a journey that would stretch over 11 long years. Years filled with reading, exploring, and questioning everything he had ever known. He began with the religion he inherited, but found it full of contradictions. When he asked difficult questions, he was told to stop asking and just believe. That answer didn't sit right with him. so he turned to other faiths. He studied Christianity deeply, moved by the message of love but troubled by the concept of a man being God. He explored Hinduism and Buddhism, appreciating the philosophy but confused by the multiple gods and abstract answers to life's deepest questions. He read countless religious books, attended lectures, sat with scholars, and tried meditation and prayer in many forms, but no matter where he looked, he never found clarity or certainty. The more he searched, the more empty he felt. Islam remained a religion he kept his distance from. The media painted a grim picture, and he never met a practicing Muslim who could show him what Islam truly was. But one day, during a chance meeting, he spoke to a calm and sincere Muslim man who simply said, "Don't judge Islam by people, judge it by its book." That one line planted a seed in his heart. He got a copy of the Quran and began reading it, not to believe, but to understand. Yet with every verse, something shifted inside him. The Quran wasn't trying to convince him emotionally, it was speaking to his logic and heart at the same time. The words felt alive. They answered questions he thought had no answers. It was in those verses that he saw the pure concept of God. One, without partner, eternal, all-knowing, merciful, and just. The same message repeated with clarity and conviction. For the first time, he wasn't confused. He didn't feel pressured. He felt peace. His heart whispered what his mind had finally accepted. This is the truth. He continued reading the Quran daily, each time uncovering meanings that seemed to speak directly to his soul. He was amazed by how the Quran didn't demand blind faith, but encouraged deep thinking. It didn't just say what to believe, it explained why. The verses challenged him to look at the world, reflect on creation, life, death, and the purpose of existence. Unlike other books he had read, this one didn't feel outdated or vague. It was as if it knew his thoughts before he even formed them. The more he read, the more questions it answered. And for the first time in his long search, the answers made complete sense. What struck him most was the Quran's clear and consistent message about the oneness of God. There were no confusing family trees of deities, no metaphors about God becoming human. It said simply, He is Allah, the one and only. Allah, the eternal refuge. He neither begets nor is born, nor is there to him any equivalent. That one chapter, Surah Al-Ikhlas, shook him. How could something so short hold such power? It summarized everything he had been looking for in just a few lines. It felt like God was directly speaking to him, clearly, simply, beautifully. He also found himself drawn to the character of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He had read about many religious leaders before, but the life of the Prophet was different. The Prophet wasn't just a spiritual figure. He was a husband, father, leader, friend, and guide. His life was fully documented, open to scrutiny, and filled with wisdom, patience, and justice. How could a man who lived in the desert 1,400 years ago speak words that resonate with such truth even today? How could a man who couldn't read or write bring a book that even modern scientists and scholars were still studying and admiring? The beauty of the Quran and the example of the Prophet combined to show him something he had never seen before. A religion that was both spiritual and practical, divine yet deeply human. It wasn't built on myths or borrowed ideas. It was pure, unchanging, and clear. As he read more, he cried, not out of sadness, but relief. He had spent over a decade searching, and now, for the first time, he felt found. Despite the inner clarity he was beginning to feel, he knew that embracing Islam wasn't going to be easy. He had friends who joked about religion and a family that expected him to follow their traditions. Still, something deep inside kept pulling him forward. He couldn't ignore the truth just because it was inconvenient. So, he kept learning in silence, watching lectures, reading translations of the Quran, and listening to stories of others who had embraced Islam. Each story reminded him that he wasn't alone. Others had walked this path, some with more struggles, others with fewer, but all of them found the same peace he was now beginning to taste. He also started visiting mosques, not to declare anything, but to observe. What he saw surprised him. Muslims weren't what the media had shown him all his life. They were kind, welcoming, and incredibly diverse. He saw black, white, Arab, Asian, and even Western Muslims standing side by side in prayer like one family. There were no caste systems, no hierarchies based on wealth or skin color. In the mosque, he felt a unity he hadn't seen anywhere else. One Friday, he stayed back after the sermon and an elderly man approached him. Sensing his curiosity, the man simply said, "When the heart knows the truth, don't let fear stop you." That sentence stayed with him all week. Eventually, he couldn't delay it anymore. He knew what he had to do. With trembling hands, but a calm heart, he walked into the mosque one quiet afternoon and asked to meet the imam. The imam listened to his journey, nodded, and said, "Brother, it seems Allah has already guided your heart." Moments later, with tears in his eyes, he repeated the words that would change his life forever. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. It was a moment of quiet triumph. No music played, no lights flashed, but in that silence, he found the peace he had been searching for over 11 years. It wasn't dramatic. It was simple, pure, and life-changing. He didn't just find a new religion. He found the real God, and in doing so, he found himself. After embracing Islam, everything around him seemed to change. Not just the way he lived, but the way he saw life itself. The questions that once haunted him felt answered. He no longer felt like he was chasing something unknown. He now understood who created him, why he was created, and what his purpose truly was. Life didn't feel random anymore. Every breath, every moment, every test, it all had meaning. And even though he had lost friends and faced some uncomfortable conversations, he had gained something far greater: clarity, direction, and an unshakable peace in his heart. He began learning how to pray, slowly memorizing the words in Arabic. At first, it felt difficult, foreign sounds, unfamiliar movements, but each time he prayed, he felt connected. It was like having a direct conversation with the one who created him. No need for an intermediary, no need for rituals he didn't understand. Just him, his Lord, and a sense of humility he had never experienced before. The very act of bowing down, physically lowering himself to the ground, broke down his ego and built up his soul. One of the most beautiful parts of his journey was the realization that Islam didn't ask him to abandon his mind, it invited him to use it. Every verse of the Quran encouraged thought, reflection, questioning. Islam wasn't blind belief. It was belief based on evidence, logic, and heart. He no longer had to pretend to believe things that didn't make sense. It matched what he had always felt deep inside, that there is one God, unlike his creation, merciful, just, and always near. He also began to feel a deep love for Prophet Muhammad. The more he read about his life, the way he forgave those who hurt him, the way he uplifted women, treated orphans, honored parents, and stood for justice, the more he felt connected. This wasn't just a man in history. This was a true example of how to live with balance, compassion, and purpose. With every passing day, his heart softened. His past judgments faded, and the peace he had searched for in philosophy, books, and religions for over a decade, he now felt it 5 times a day in prayer. In every verse he read, and in every quiet moment when he whispered, La ilaha, la la la. He never expected that the people he once judged would become his biggest support. After accepting Islam, he feared isolation, judgment, and rejection. But instead, the Muslim community embraced him like family. They didn't ask about his past. They didn't judge his journey. They just welcomed him with warmth, smiles, and sincerity. Whether it was a young brother showing him how to pray, or an elder guiding him through Quranic verses, he felt surrounded by care. For the first time in his life, he experienced brotherhood that was free of conditions and full of compassion. His life began to reflect the peace that had entered his heart. His priorities shifted. What once mattered, status, possessions, appearances, began to fade in importance. He became more conscious of his actions, his words, and his purpose. He would wake up before dawn, not just to start a new day, but to stand before his Creator in prayer. Those quiet moments before sunrise became the most beautiful part of his life. Tears would often roll down his cheeks, not out of sadness, but out of gratitude. Gratitude for finding the truth after so many years of confusion. He also started sharing his story with others, not out of pride, but as a way to give hope. He knew there were people just like him, questioning, searching, doubting, and he wanted them to know they weren't alone. He would often say, I mocked what I didn't understand, but now I've tasted the beauty of Islam, and I only wish I had opened my heart sooner. His words began to touch others, especially those on the edge of faith, those afraid to take the step he had taken. One day, he looked back at the day he had declared his Shahada, the moment he became a Muslim, and realized it wasn't the end of his journey. It was the beginning, a journey of growth, purification, and endless learning. He still had challenges, but now he faced them with a heart anchored in faith. He still had questions, but now he had a path that gave answers. The peace he once chased for over a decade now lived within him, and he knew with full certainty that he had found the truth. Not because someone forced him, but because the truth had found him. In the months that followed his embrace of Islam, his transformation was both visible and deeply internal. He no longer walked through life searching aimlessly. Now, every step he took had direction, guided by a purpose far greater than himself. Islam didn't just change what he believed, it changed how he lived. It restructured his values, refined his character, and redefined success in his life. Where success once meant money or recognition, now it meant sincerity in worship, kindness to others, and seeking the pleasure of Allah. One of the most powerful realizations he had was how Islam balanced both this world and the next. It didn't ask him to abandon his career, his relationships, or his goals. Instead, it taught him how to align them with goodness and faith. He began to see his work as a means to provide for his family, his relationships as opportunities to spread love and understanding, and his free time as moments to grow closer to his Creator. This balance gave him relief. He didn't need to become someone else, he just needed to become the best version of himself through Islam. The Quran became his constant companion. Every verse seemed to speak to him in a personal way. One verse in particular continued to echo in his heart. Indeed, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. Quran 13:28. This wasn't just a verse, it was his reality. Whenever the pressures of life overwhelmed him, he turned to prayer, to dhikr, and to reflection, and with that his heart would calm. The anxiety that once consumed him now faded in the light of faith. Even his family and friends, who once questioned his decision, began to notice the change. He wasn't just more peaceful, He was more patient, more grounded, more generous. Some even started asking questions, curious about what had brought him this transformation. He never forced his beliefs on anyone, but he lived as an example. His actions began to reflect the beauty of Islam more than his words ever could. Now, after 12 years of searching, his heart had found what it was truly longing for. And every time he raised his hands in prayer, he felt a deep, unshakable gratitude for the journey, for the struggles, and for finally bowing down to the one who had been guiding him all along. After 12 long years of searching, doubting, questioning, and wandering through countless philosophies and religions, he finally found what his soul was yearning for: peace, clarity, and truth in Islam. The moment he bowed his head in sujud for the first time, he knew this was the connection he had been searching for his entire life. It wasn't just a religion, it was a return to his creator, to purpose, and to inner stillness that no worldly achievement ever gave him. His story is a powerful reminder that no matter how long the search, the truth has a way of reaching a sincere heart. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it takes a single verse, a quiet moment, or a deep conversation. But when guidance comes, it transforms everything. His life didn't become perfect, but it became meaningful. His heart didn't become free from pain, but it became filled with hope. And above all, he learned that submission to one God is not about restriction, it's about liberation. Real freedom came when he let go of his ego and aligned himself with divine truth. To all those watching, whether you're a seeker, a skeptic, or someone just curious, this story is not just about him. It's a story that reflects what so many go through when they ask the big questions. Who am I? Why am I here? Who is God? If you're asking those questions, know that you're not alone. And know that Islam has the answers, rooted in mercy, clarity, and logic. Thank you for watching this heartfelt journey. We hope it touched your heart and gave you something to reflect upon. If this story inspired you, don't let it end here. Ask questions, open the Quran, speak to a Muslim, seek with sincerity, and you will find. Please like, share, and subscribe to stay connected with more real stories like this that illuminate the path of truth. And remember, guidance is a gift, and it begins with one honest question. Thank you for being here. Peace be upon you.